Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Gin and Tantra, Spirituality with a Twist. We are joined today by a friend of the show and now contributor, one Katie Petersen. Katie, say hi.
Hi.
Hey. Um, there's some additions, some new people that'll be joining us on a regular basis. Katie being one of them. There's a few others who will be joining us as well. But we figured we'd get something going for the new year. And so, Katie, thanks for being a part of us our work here. Happy to have you on. I'll give a little background on you in the kind of like the introduction of, or like the kind of the written introduction. Now that we don't do strictly audio anymore, I don't really do the intros because no one would want to watch a black screen for a minute while I talked, I guess. That's my assumption.
Right.
But anyways, but I'll do a little, I'll steal a little bio from you at some point and
Yeah.
add it to there, whatever. But just so people can kind of know you briefly, and we'll probably start your official beginning with like a TMI episode about you, um, condensed version. But
No,
um,
I was like a 5 volume version.
yes, yes,
Like you're asking for too much information from someone who gives too much information. You've just like actually tripled it because that's the math.
yes. If you want, maybe just Katie and I have been friends and accomplices for the last, man, almost really like 8 years, which sounds crazy to say. And so Katie's a good friend of mine, deep trust, a lot of deep work. Katie does many things, but let me give you the floor for, maybe 2 minutes here just to kind of explain yourself a little bit for people who don't know you. And I'm sure this episode will be listened to by some folks who do, but the majority of our audience doesn't know you. So let me give you the floor to say hi.
Yeah. Hi. So I guess like explaining myself, the first thing that popped into my head was I'm a super sensitive, sensing being,
Mm,
and that has permeated everything I do. Um, and I guess I'm always seeking to put puzzles together from what's happening from feeling and sensation. And that
mhm.
is probably part of what led me to finding Daniel. Um, and I guess to make that more literal, like we're strength coaches, we do a lot with the body. Obviously, people know you, but I work with people in wellness and their energy and their physicality and all these things. But there's this kind of greater support system that I feel drawn to connecting with, sharing. And that's, yeah, I guess something about me.
That's great. Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, Katie does a number of different things. So in the fitness realm, in the wellness realm, overall, Katie's a yoga instructor. She works with sound and people individually in group classes, and she runs different kind of like competitions, physical type competitions using kettlebells and teams and things like this. She's a judo wrestler or judo player. Is that what you call it?
Jujitsu
But
student,
but
practitioner.
practitioner. That's right. Okay, judo people play, but jujitsu people practice. So there's right? Is that how it works? I don't know. Whatever.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think
We
I
fight.
right. Yeah, no, it's a fight. We're practicing fighting. So anyways, Katie, I wanted to, I asked you to come on today so we can have this conversation as we're recording this on December 30th, and this will probably go out on the 31st. And so we are at the end of 2024, which has been a whirlwind of a year for many people, myself included. There was an election, there was an attempted assassination on a public figure, there were many deaths and many births and many transitions for lots of people, myself included, many people in our circle as well. And I like to, so I did this, I think, actually last year with my cousin Joey. I think that's who I did it with. And so it's funny to have you on now. But I kind of like to do a little wrap up a little bit, not necessarily of the year, but of what's coming, right? And so I kind of came up with three questions that we'll talk about. And then, obviously, audience, you can think about these for yourself at any point. And if you want to, I'm happy to hear from people interested in what people think or say. So please feel free to hit us up at ginandtantra@gmail.com or hit us up on Instagram, the Gin and Tantra podcast. You can slide into our DMs, if you will, and we'll see where that goes. Or if you want,
Oh man.
yes, exactly. It doesn't really go anywhere, so it's fine. We have a small following of just
Disclaimer doesn't go anywhere.
yeah, it doesn't go anywhere. We have a small following of a couple 100,000 people, so it's not a large network, but it will be someday. Anyways, Okay, so questions, right? People love to make New Year's resolution, and I like that idea in terms of looking forward, right? But for me, I like to break things down a little bit further. So how I want to frame this conversation, and before we kind of move into the larger part, is with three questions. What do you want to leave in 2024? What do you want to bring in 2025 or the next phase, whatever you want to call it, into the winter, right? And what do you want to change, or maybe what do you want to cultivate? Because sometimes we're at different points of building or developing. And sometimes for me, the initial place of that is change. You're like, I want to do something different, and then you can step into it. But sometimes you've already begun that process and you want to deepen it, right? And so you want to cultivate that thing. So I'm going to let you begin. What do you want to leave here? What do you want to leave in the fall? What do you want to bring with you into the spring, essentially? And what do you want to alchemize, or what do you want to build or mold moving forward past the spring into the rest of the upcoming seasons? We'll do it seasonality, right?
That helps. I get so nervous. Okay, so I need to sit with it for a second because a lot ran through me just now. Because a lot just happened. Like over Christmas, a lot happens. You're with family, and it's just intense. And
Yeah.
there's a lot that I work on all year
Hmm.
that I feel does have a culmination when I go home over Christmas because it's like, this is all the mirrors outside of me. Ugh. But also, you're experiencing it all on the human level of like reaction and emotion and all the things that I've been working on are kind of being put to a test, right?
Hmm.
So, but to take it backwards, like a step behind that, before I left, I do
Left
a
where?
thing.
Left where?
To go
Left.
home to
Oh,
Omaha
got it.
for the holidays with
Yeah.
family. So that before I left, it's almost like the fiscal year. I'm in quarter four. So I start doing a lot of cleaning and I start cleaning out journals and notes and what is it that I'm leaving behind? What is it that I'm letting shift in me? And I really have to work with the language of I'm not like getting rid of because a lot of times it's not that it's like that expectation that something's gone and
Yeah.
or if it's not then you failed. It's like what
Mm.
am I shifting, how am I rewiring that this is going to be something slightly different and I can feel different and I can meet it differently and there's a different outcome and it doesn't have to be cataclysmically different but it's different. So I'm cleaning house, doing all the things and an altar somehow comes together and there's scraps of paper with things I've written, one with a diamond on it that says womb matrix. I'm like, ooh, I have to like go into that. And it was the fight. It was like I'm leaving the fight to think I need to defend something, defend myself, to have to fight for my point, to have to struggle to be understood. It's like I might have to work with that differently in different relationships and different circumstances, but to let go of the assumption that it's going to be a fight. And that
Mm-hmm.
was, I
Hmm.
think, the how I couldn't encapsulate it just now. It's the assumption that it's going to be a fight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
watching the explosions when I'm at home, it's like it's that. People are yelling to have their point, and like the point is already understood. And it's underneath it that we're going to have to come to a solution or building solutions versus fighting about whether or not your point is valid. The point can be valid, we still don't have a solution. And if
Mm.
you're angry about it, it's like you can't even see that route. So I see that play out in front of me in a very literal sense.
Mm.
Interestingly enough, that's like the handful of crystals and notebook paper and whatever that I bring home and forget about and leave it in the suitcase until all of a sudden it's making sense. But
Mm.
it is a lot of what is in my life that I feel I've been working on all year and shifting in different ways that have looked different to me. And then it had to hit me hard at home where someone else was doing it versus me fixing me. And
Mm.
how I respond to the someone else doing it is kind of like, well, that's the alchemizing moment of them being able to give myself more compassion,
Yeah.
relief, a belief that a mistake doesn't make me bad
Yeah.
or wrong,
Yeah.
or that I then am needing to carry shame and by proxy will now induce shame in others through my anger. And so I think that that was a bigger whirlwind all year. I mean, I have a much longer dentist story
Yeah,
that I
another.
handled like a warrior in the garden versus like somebody like slinging their M16. And like that said, I'm not just always this angry person when things happen. I also then will sometimes just sever things. And that leaves a different kind of shame in me where like I feel like I am bad, so I have to run, or I feel like I'm gonna end up getting too angry, so I have to run. Versus in other situations, I just get angry. But either way, there's no like in between of like, well, what happens if I can just tap into like, I'm not bad.
Sure.
And I
So
also, yeah.
so just for the but for before we unpack other things, I want to just have it so that like it's conversation
Mm-hmm.
like pieces, right? So what you're saying is that like one of the things that you are wanting to leave behind, that you have been working on to leave behind, is this idea that you there is an assumption of fight or struggle in order to, and then maybe fill in this part for me, make your point or be heard or have a conflict resolved, or that part was a little bit unclear to me. I just wanted to kind of clarify
Yeah, I
that
think
piece.
that to let go of the fight, to maybe it's to be heard, maybe it's the to have your point proved or understood, but it's also like I have to fight to exist in a situation, or I have to
Mm,
fight to
mm,
be, or I
yeah.
have to fight to belong,
Mm,
or like that anything's a fight in maybe the greater sense of belongingness. And when there's conflict, well, gosh, that fight gets fiery. So
yeah.
now I've got to like really unimaginable bigness in my body that I don't know how to handle
Yeah.
unless I'm actually working with what that is on both the vibrational level in my body and what it is that's happening. And so I think the letting go of, as you encapsulate it, like it is, it's the assumption that I have to struggle
Yes.
to be loved. Maybe that's the
There,
simplicity of it.
yeah, there.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so
Or just even in a larger extent, even in a larger sense, to exist as you, right? And same thing, because like being, at least for me,
exist as me to be
yeah,
loved. Yeah.
yes, yeah. That was going to go to the next part. The next thing is like part of being loved is being loved as you. Because
Yep.
if someone loves you for an idea, that really you? Is that love really directed at you? Or is that directed at the projection of you, which isn't you? And therefore it's kind of like hard to accept it because you're like, it's kind of not me though. Actually, it's
To
like,
your point, like that, you just like blew my mind too, because part of you doesn't know that it's not you, because part of you has been doing that thing, that program for so long
yeah,
that it feels wrong, but there's no logic around what's wrong. There's friction, but there's no like, well, I don't know why I don't feel loved. Everything outside of me says that I should feel good and that I am, but something inside of me isn't. And it's those places that we fraction off that we're
yeah.
not conscious of too.
That discrepancy between the two is the struggle that probably what you're talking about, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
there's that space, which is the acceptance of yourself, and then the feeling like it's necessity to put forth effort in a struggle kind of a way to assimilate the other pieces that we are aware of and unaware of, in a sense.
And it's almost like believing that we're not allowed to fight, that that's going to mean something. That's going to mean there's like an abandonment or a severing, or that will make you unlovable. And that not being allowed is why you believe you have to struggle.
Mm,
And no, that's not it. Not being allowed is why you believe your point has to be understood to get to a solution.
mm,
It doesn't necessarily need to be agreed with, understood, or cared for is all I
yeah,
really would
sure.
need. But it doesn't need to be agreed with. So you don't really need to fight for that agreement when we're going towards solutions. It's just we can't do what we're doing here. Can we look at different solutions?
Yeah. So let me ask you then. So and I'll do mine too, right? But like, so giving up the idea or the assumption of struggle for existence, struggle for love, struggle to be heard, struggle to be you, or struggle to be us, right? In a more humanistic perspective. So if that's what it is that you are wanting to, if that's what you've been alchemizing to release or to not have be a part of the program moving forward, hello, Katie. Um, what is it that you are wanting to see come to fruition as because we get rid of something or not really we release something, right? That is not in the programming moving forward. And Eric and I love to have this debate. Speaking of struggles and battles, I like software analogies because I do think that it works well for our mindscape.
For sure.
He doesn't like it, and so we have it's a nice little struggle. But he's not here, so this is software, Eric. This is software shit. Um, but in terms of like, okay, so we're getting rid of that program, right, or changing that program. What is it in that space that is then created where that energy was bound to struggling, to fighting, to viewing things as a binary kind of, um, I don't know, in an arena where there's a winner and a loser, right? And you have to
Hmm.
struggle to have that with the energy now that would be freed from that part being more gone, not 100%, but more gone than not. What would you like to see arise,
What would I like to see arise? Huh.
or do you want to see arise?
I was heading towards a different feeling of answer until that was the language. And I'm like, hold on. Because it's almost like what I'm seeing arise.
Or sure, I mean, what are you seeing
That
arise?
is so uncomfortable. And maybe that's why I don't want to let go of the struggle. Like there's pieces uh where if I'm not fighting, I have to be quieter. I have to be more still. I have to
Mm,
feel through what was the fight.
mm-hmm,
Ugh, like it's a lot in me.
mm-hmm.
But I also could see how different it is because I'm consistently aware that I'm in it and not masking when that intensity is in my body. So I have to
Right.
exit an environment or, if it isn't as huge, if it's something small, I just notice a little bit of a raciness or a little more compulsive energy
Yeah.
and then behavior. And so there's something about the sensitivity is what happens when I care to
Mm,
pay attention to it. And then I think it refines my understanding of, oh, that just hit my shame chord. And so then for me, it makes me eventually like, I have to vent, I have to get angry, I have to whatever, maybe say something to a trusted person. But like at a point where after I've gotten everything out, I have to go sit with like the shame and then ask what narrative I'm doing and what judgment I'm saying this is having on me, if someone's perceiving me the certain way, whatever it is, it's still coming through my lens. So I'm kind of going into that. And I've had a couple humbling spaces recently where getting into like that portal of like, well, why am I actually putting this narrative out? And maybe part of it is something that has been expressed, and maybe part of it's not. But like right now, that's where I'm going. And so to me, what's coming, what I'm bringing in
Yeah.
is through this portal of deeper awareness and some places of humbling that I still have yet to even like share with you outside
Yeah.
of the podcast. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm just touching it. I'm like catching where I lied to myself about something
Sure. Sure.
and then avoided even learning through my own lie. And now I have like an apology to somebody that like I don't even,
Yeah.
know if they care, but I caught myself where I'm in a shame point. So all that said, what I'm bringing that I haven't yet realized is I think the courage to have some of these conversations and facings, or I don't know.
Not sure yet.
I'm not sure yet because there's a
Okay.
courage that maybe it's not a conversation either. And I think some of it's a courage to let go of the shame, that if I can actually allow the space that's awareness where I'm not putting a struggle forward to defend or be seen or whatever, there is an awareness of like, oh, well, where am I avoiding relationship with people or dismissing, or have I put up barriers because I'm stuck behind a narrative? And in that, I want to bring in kind of the like defragmenting of that, or what's my software analogy? Like unwiring of what I've put up in
A boundary.
reflection of this dynamic and what
So
are,
so let me there's it's like frayed at the moment, right?
yeah.
So okay. All right. So let's just we'll do this. So you know, and then I'll do mine so that we don't, you know, just keep doing this one piece. But what I'll say is that like from how it looks for me is that
Hmm.
you have an understanding that there is an energy that is it's a struggling kind of it's a pushing energy, it's a forceful energy, it's kind of an angry energy, it's a you know a fighting energy we'll call it, right? That that is there for whatever reason, but it's behind a lot of the things. It's behind a lot of the ways in which, you know, you struggle to be heard at times for ways that maybe are in some relationships, some different kind of things that you are wanting to let go of. But that energy is still present. Right. And so as we're talking about like alchemizing and changing something, the question, and you know, and this is just will be an open-ended question. It's like, okay, what is that wind do now that it's not pushing you in a direction that you no longer want to be going, right? You don't want to move in this area. So you don't allow that wind to move you in that way. And so, and again, we'll just leave it as an open question. Where is it that you would like for that wind to move you? And why I say that is because there is, you know, in the kind of Tibetan, the Vajrayana tradition, the tantric tradition, there are many different, you know, tantric deities, you know, that are associated with various psycho-emotional or energetic qualities, some of which are art, some of which are love, some of which would be wisdom, some of which would be, you know, whatever, right? Healing, but some of which are ferocity, actually, right? And they are to like stare death right in the face and overcome. They scare death just by staring at it. They like kill death if you can do that, right? But they burn a hole with their eyes. And so why I say that is that like there's an area of like anger that is kind of the flip side of ferocity, right? Being fierce. So if your cat is about to dive out of the window, you're going to probably yell and grab it and be like, "Oh my God, don't ever do that," right? Or your, you know, your nephew or your niece wants to stick a fork in a socket, and you run by them and you just smack them because you don't need to worry about like, are they going to be traumatized by this? We'll let them be traumatized and not have brain damage from electrocuting themselves. So this is an
And it's in you, but like
yes.
you're not walking around blocking every outlet.
Yes.
And it's the assumption of it's going to be a struggle, or assumption of victimhood, or assumption that something's going to go wrong. But the fire is like the fire, and to
The
me
fire is still there.
it's pure. And so that stare does capture someone because it's pure. It's not coming through all these judgments that we feel.
It's
Judgment, when
it's
someone
coming,
judges you, you feel it. They don't have to say it.
yeah, it's coming from compassion. So that's what I'm saying. That ferocity is coming from a compassionate place. And
Yeah.
so, and you know, you've used that when we spoke earlier on the phone, you were using that word kind of pretty regularly. So it's like how, you know, how is it that you are going to take that energy now, the energy of struggle, and maybe not change it on the outside, but change it on the inside
I got
and
it.
infuse compassion into it such that you are not being on the one side of a dualistic battle where nobody really ever wins because you just the energy is in just the is in the fighting.
It's the shame.
Right.
It's actually, that's it. Like that's the, I'm still not bringing it with me,
Hmm.
but it's the stepping into a deeper understanding of what is my actual nature. That's what I'm bringing into this
Mm.
year. And
Okay.
if I can shed this really like old, decrepit program, like
Yeah.
it's just sticky. It's like, it's not even really, it's just something that, and I was saying this earlier, something like around shame. It, for a long time, I would just think like that's such a primal human emotion. Oh,
Yeah.
everybody feels this. Oh, it's that deepest layer that every human feels. And more like in the last couple of weeks, I've kind of gotten to a different understanding for myself that's like not our nature.
Yeah.
That's something that is a programmed into us thing that we're born with original sin because of an apple or something.
Yeah.
But like we're not. That's not our nature. And
So
so I
let's hold the shame. We'll do the shame part in a minute. Let me
I think that's my spring thing that I'm going to, or the 2025
got
thing
it.
though, is that like I'm, what's the opposite of bringing that with me is what I'm bringing. I'm bringing an acceptance. I'm bringing a
Mm,
space for myself to be able to actually not just make mistakes and let them go for me, but have others around me making mistakes and have ways of working around this that are different. And I think I am pretty, uh, I don't know what the right word is, like, but neutral in this capacity already. But there's
hmm
something bigger and there's something deeper for me where I am hitting a different layer of what I need to accept and love in me. And that is what I want to kind of, I guess, cultivate too. I don't see it as not an exchange. It's that moving how I look at and embody shame, and then also how I'm judging anyone else when they're deflecting out of it. And
Sure.
so that to me is bringing in a greater compassion state on both directions. And the cultivation is yet to be seen. But for me, also feeling where that holds me back, I think it's opening up greater space for romantic love, for being
Mm,
able to be seen in environments and community in different ways, or to accept that I might be able to do something scary that I don't believe I have any place doing, or, that sort of thing.
hmm All right. So we'll leave. So the cultivation part we'll talk about. I'll just do mine quickly because I feel like that's ultimately where we want to be. And anyways, in this part. Um, so thank you for sharing. Um, and okay. So for myself, okay. Leaving in 2024. Um, I know. I don't know everybody who listens to this show, our podcast, right? We're a year 4.5, and we are making changes moving forward. We'll be putting out content almost every day, which I'm very excited to be doing. For those who've been here with us since the beginning, thank you. For those who are this is their first time or their 100th time or whatever, thank you. I say all of that because I do know that there are some people who watch this show to see me and to catch up with me, even if we're not in contact. So to those people, I say hello. I still love you. Um, but what I am not bringing with me into the next year is relationships that are not parallel with where I am going. And that is a very difficult thing to do. I am a community person. I have been building communities for quite some time. I have numerous of them that I have cobbled together over the years with boogers and bubblegum, as I like to say. Um, and so it is difficult to lose people in this way. Uh, just as like a core kind of being for myself. So even though that is not easy to do, I am also aware that you can't carry everything. The trunk eventually becomes too heavy to take on your journey. And so by my own volition and the volition of others, like I'm letting things play out as they are, and I am no longer watering certain plants. So I'm not bringing certain people with me into the next into the next chapter. Doesn't mean I don't love them, um, and it's kind of sometimes painful, but I've accepted that this is the season. So not going into long-term storage with me in the hibernation phase, and therefore they will not be taken out to play in the springtime when it is eventually the season of sharing again. You know what I'm saying? So that's one, and the part that I'm wanting to bring with me is the idea of creating ripples, that we do things that happen now and then they ripple, right? They have positive or negative, I guess, consequences, cause and effect, karma, if you will. I want to be very as intentional as I can with the ripples that I'm creating. So I'm at the end of a cycle, at least I hope. I'm at the end of a cycle now, and I'm intentionally taking a pause with many things before the next cycle is beginning. But you never really truly know when something is starting and something is stopping or vice versa. So you just try and like feel it out anyways, at least I do. And so I'm wanting to be far more aware and creative in the ripples that move forward in time, you know, and
And backward.
and backward. Yeah, I want to have that as a piece that I'm aware of. Now, obviously, you want to be also spontaneous in the moment and not being like super calculated. So there's a bit of a balance between those two pieces. But for me, I'm like, if I'm going to do something, I would like it to not. I don't want to be overly concerned with the outcome of something that is natural. You know what I'm saying? So this is kind of what I'm wanting um, to bring with me in the next
Say that last part
life.
again. Say that last sentence one more time.
I am not wanting to. I don't know what I said, but something in the line.
Something about not natural.
Yeah, something like I don't want to be concerned about the consequences of something that comes natural.
Ah, yes, yes.
You know what I'm
That I
saying?
maybe I needed to hear it again, but that's really what syncs up with exactly what I'm feeling too.
Yeah,
And in different ways it spreads out, but it's like, yeah, and things are gonna drop off when I don't have the same
yeah.
wiring to this configuration.
And we've been using the word authenticity for a long time. I feel like it's a little bit more, it's becoming more popular in the sort of lexicon of like modern day
Hmm.
superficial spiritual bullshit talk. Um,
Charlatans.
Charlatans, you know what I'm saying? Now, if they're from Charlotte, no hate, right? You know, that's how it is if you're from Charlotte.
But
Uh,
that's we are hardwired for authenticity. I've
oh
been
yeah,
saying that for a while. And it's like,
yeah,
again, sometimes it's unconscious, but you can feel when there's something that's not
yeah. My
authentic.
stink meter it's already up there, you know, from my own. It's high from my own bullshit. I can't have anybody else's on top of it. It doesn't
Right.
work.
That's why. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. It only
exactly right.
takes
That's
my
exactly.
bullshit.
Oh, listen, I'm honest. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I am no hero, man, no role model. I'm like
Look, I found a little layer of my own bullshit last week that like nobody even knows about. That I'm like, oh, I was bullshitting that.
yeah, for
And I
sure.
never even saw it. So it hides well, but not for others.
No. Okay, so the kind of the meat of the conversation here, and I think the interesting part is like, all right, what do we want to alchemize, or what do we want to change moving forward? And you were kind of mentioning this shame piece. So, and this was the kind of like the crux of our conversation earlier and why we wanted to do this. But I like having things that are multifaceted. You know what I'm saying? It kind of livens up the conversation a little bit. Um, so let's get into that part now. So like if there was going to be an editing portion, we would edit right here and move to the next one. But there isn't, not
Uh-huh,
yet
uh-huh.
anyways, but soon we will. Um, Okay, so this last part, it's like, all right, well, what do we want to cultivate and make change, or start to like alchemize, if we're going to use nice lingo, And for me and for you independently, but then together, it's this idea around shame. And we can certainly talk about this individually as it is. It's still the same essence, but it's shame for me is a reaction to a thing. And so I will start, and then you can certainly add. I had you start last time. I don't want you always to be the one first in the water. I will dive head first, naked, into a pool of Jello. Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's where we're going.
yeah, totally. Random. We always have to do like maybe one random story, and so random Jello story. Uh, I went to a restaurant that shall remain nameless. It's probably closed down because I was quite young when I went there, and I'm pretty old now. I'm about maybe 75 or something like that. I don't know exactly how old I am anymore. Um, so I went to a restaurant and we went for lunch, and for dessert, because you have to have dessert when you have lunch when you're 9, I got some Jello. And I was like, oh, cool, Jello. Jello's great. Who doesn't like Jello, And I thought that there was like fruit in the Jello, because sometimes they'll put like canned fruit in the
Oh
Jello.
God.
Yes, it gets worse. Katie, it was not fruit in the Jello, Katie. It was not fruit in the Jello, Katie.
What they put in the Jello,
Uh,
Daniel.
a cockroach.
Oh no, you eat it?
I didn't eat it. I spit it out because I put it in my mouth, and I felt something like in there that was super gross, and I spit it out, and there it was on the table yeah,
So gross.
Jello.
Well, good Jello story.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so random story complete, box checked. All right. Anyways, okay, so shame is a response to a thing. And what I am intentionally going to try and monitor for myself is shame being released as a response to pleasure. I have been aware of this in myself in the kind of, we could say, like erotic space for like quite some time. I'm not quite sure why. And over the last couple months, I've been kind of diving into that as why is that the case? And I have some pretty good ideas as to where it might have come from. But what I noticed, and like how you mentioned with the anger piece or the fight piece, is that it actually pervades numerous other areas. It's like putting a drop of food coloring in a fish tank. It eventually permeates the entire thing, right? And so when I think about for myself, shame and pleasure, I think about it in any, I ask myself, okay, where does the shame come from with what pleasure? Well, eating. I mean, I like to be healthy, but if I eat some cookies or something like that, I have to go, oh, that's too much. I enjoyed it, but that's enough. No more now, right? And so and I love cookies. So like I have to stop myself. You know what I'm saying? But I can't stop myself and be done and just let it go. I have to stop myself and be like, hey, you fucked up, bro. You know what I'm saying?
And
Like,
like the ultimate part of the sentence is, I love cookies. I love cookies, right? Like
yeah.
all of that around like the regulation and the boundaries and the restricting and the denial and the having to have all or nothing potentially. Like, but it's, I love this thing.
Yes.
And that's a hard thing. And I was
Yeah.
saying earlier where I think when, if we're denying our right to love something or right to experience
Mhm.
pleasure from something,
Mhm.
that's what bridges into compulsion, energy and behavior and shame.
Yeah.
Because I think in some ways we're ashamed of the compulsiveness because that's out of our nature.
Now, do kind of so on this topic, right? So again, I'm aware of that in the eating realm and in many other realms, right? It's like but I don't think I'm the only one, but I'll just speak from the in the first person so I don't sound, crazy. I feel like this is a common thing, and at some point, in order to um, foster positive habits, I implemented shame as a mediation to level off the I guess you could say like exorbitant states of happiness that get associated with certain activities, right? Whether those that
Mm-hmm.
activities be eating or plant medicine or other pleasureful things that we do with our human bodies. You know what I'm saying?
Sex.
Yes, that also. I was talking about massage, but yes, also,
All of it though,
yeah, yeah,
like all
totally.
anything, and it even scrolling on social media, like something, it's the hyper dopamine response and
Yes.
the addiction too. But I think there's also like it's bigger than that. It's original sin. It's like it's
Mm,
programmed. It's from that state of like you're born naked. You're born in shame. Like it was like get your clothes on, Adam and Eve. Like, but
yeah,
all of it is
yeah.
like it's a story, and it's a story that is restrictive and it is against our nature. And
Mm,
there's so much running through my head right now. I can't quite capture all the things to not fray it, but
yeah.
I'll step back and grab it when it's bite sized. But I believe it's from that. And so I at first wasn't hearing exactly what you meant by shame as a response to, because I'm like, but it's also like it's also in us because but it is a response. It's when
Yeah.
it gets triggered to make us feel like we're less than. It's a really good way to have power over. I don't know. There's a lot that's like kind of this top down energy that like that's you have to have an authority for shame to even exist. So if
Mm,
there isn't a, authoritarian infrastructure, it doesn't
yeah.
exist.
So you're saying your belief then is that this kind of shame is conditioned.
Yeah. Yeah. I really felt like it was a part of the primal, like human mire before. And I didn't realize I thought that. I think it's
Mm,
conditioned. And I think would then start responding out of it in all this really gross ways that we don't even realize. Like, when you are upset with something or someone, the way the tone comes out, the way the language comes out, the way I hear it from people when they're, saying something, it's inducing shame in the other person.
Mm,
It's shaming them to make me feel justified to have my feelings. And I think to me it goes back to what I want to not have. It's not so much anger. Anger's fine. I don't want to assume I have to fight for everything. And I think that that's something like I have to fight to have pleasure. I have to feel shame in wanting this thing.
mm. It's interesting. I remember my grandmother when we were younger, she would take her fingers like, and kind of like,
Uh,
and she would go, big, big shame on you, Daniel, big shame on you. I remember this, but yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up about this kind of original sin, right? What from the Christian perspective or the Catholic perspective or the Judeo-Christian perspective, right? Because this sits at a juxtaposition to the tantric path, which is the
mhm.
path based on pleasure. Not pleasure as in like that's the only thing that there is. It's not an addictive path where everything you do has to feel good. It's not. That's not what I'm saying. It's it's using pleasure as a means to cultivate yourself, right? Like you don't like discipline is good, but what if you enjoyed it? Can we enjoy things like I just find it interesting that because at least it's my assumption, and I don't know everything. Hell, I don't know barely fucking anything in the lexicon of potential
Of
knowledge.
knowing things.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to knowing things, I know little. Um, but Judeo-Christianity mm, is not it's not that old it's not as old as other traditions. And other traditions are far more, if you look at their iconography, are far more liberal in their depictions of men and women, specifically of men and women together, right? There's a shit ton more nudity. There's a shit ton more of like male and female in union, specifically.
It's divides us. Like as you're saying it, all I keep feeling and hearing is the word divided, divides us. It divides us.
Yeah.
And like that's you see it in our politics. We have a two-party system. Like it starts to permeate outward into
Well,
everything.
in this country we do.
Divides us. Right, right. But just creating division
Yeah.
is and it doesn't always exist and hasn't always existed in
Correct.
all cultures and subcultures. But
Yes.
I believe it's thick now. And even if you're not from a Judeo-Christian upbringing, it's here.
Yes.
It's the loudest thing, and like it's who's the ruling class. So they're ruling from that book,
Mm,
and I don't mean the Bible. I just mean like that larger game theory is what we're all part of.
yeah. In um in the tantras they talk about these three kinds of suffering. And one of the main three types of suffering is specifically listed as the suffering of conditioning. And the suffering of conditioning, I think, in the classical sense, to my understanding, based on what I've read and how I understand it, it's human conditioning, as in you are you is the way that you believe yourself to be. So it's like you're in a body, you have an ego, you have a self-identified being as separate from other selves, this conditioning. However, we could totally take and expand that definition to say societal conditioning, parental conditioning, religious conditioning, cultural conditioning, right? But all of these various layers, to your point, of conditioning that get placed upon us, whether we're aware of them or not, and
Mm-hmm.
those things pervade our consciousness. And I think that they make this observation of trying or yeah, at least this beginning of an awareness to try and decouple shame from our actions um, in a sense one of the paths to freedom, really, because you with shame you stop yourself. Others don't stop you because when you feel it, like shame is one, at least to me, one of these weird feelings that like in a sense it's not. I'm not going to say it's worse than pain because I don't want someone to like smash my face with a 2x4 tomorrow and then be like, no, shame is worse. Like, no, it's bad in terms of physics, in terms of discomfort that the body can experience, but it's pretty gnarly. Like it stings in the moment and it goes with you. You learn to avoid it. You know what I'm saying? And so you'll
Hmm.
curtail your own behavior. You will limit how it is that you experience, in my story, pleasure in order to avoid that shame. But then the problem is that you're not going to avoid it completely. You're a human, we're human beings. I'm a human being. Um, so I'm going to go back to it. But then because I'm patterned to have the shame be coupled with pleasure, it's like once I go into it, there it comes. It's going to raise its ugly
You
head
can't
again.
have it without. They're
Yes.
just, yeah, they're orbiting each other.
Yeah.
And I think that I again don't think it's human nature, but I think it is the human construct at this point
Yeah.
for the most part. And
Yeah.
we're all in opportunity of alchemizing that.
Yeah.
And also, I think a lot of people are like, it's a conversation. It's something I've listened to and played with before, and now it's to the forefront again and a different way. But definitely, even like going back into like the sexuality part of it,
Yeah. Totally.
uh, like I can unlock so many things from just like journals of years past where it's like I remember, me and my younger or older sister like not really knowing anything and getting walked in on because my parents were gone. They came home, we're naked and we're just playing. But like we didn't even really get in trouble, but the reaction was shame and
Yes.
embarrassment, and you feel these like little infractions and big ones like all throughout your life. And so I think there's a lot there that isn't even like conditioned from a specific entity. It's like the fear of having a conversation about something we don't know how to talk about.
Yeah.
It's the shyness, it's the embarrassment, or a lot of just things that are taboo, I guess.
Yeah.
And you were going to say something. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So I think we're on the same page with this, right? I think we have a pretty good understanding of these kind of things, how they are together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would like to, if you're cool with this, move the conversation forward a little bit to an area where neither one of us are prepared for. Um,
Ready.
yes, ready. Okay, so that's the intention. So the intention is to get rid of some things, anger, relationships, or release them. We'll say.
Not anger. The assumption that you have to struggle. It's
Okay,
really not anger. It's
there we.
not
Okay,
rage. It's that assumption of struggle.
okay. So an assumption of struggle for yourself, relation, non-parallel relationships for me, moving forward is like questions on where does that energy, where does that assumption, how does that transmute, right? What, and not sure, but this is moving forward, right? For myself, it's like creating, having the cause and effect of actions and reactions be positive or at least neutral, right? In the next phase, and then taking this and then the cultivation piece, the one that's going to require more awareness and moving forward, and we can have this conversation in 12 months from now and talk about leaving shame in the mirror. But for now, we're working with it, right?
Hmm.
How? Here's the open-ended question. I'd like to spend the next maybe 10 minutes or so. How does this how are you going to go about this or begin to go about this? I know you're not going to have all the answers. I'm not going to have all the answers. Things are an unfolding process, right? Because we're going to do them.
Well, there
Yes,
are
yes,
games that
yes, you. Yes, yeah, yeah.
as you're saying it, I'm like, I say it all the time. I've been here before and I'll be here again. That's the thing I drill into my brain when I'm in a little depression space. So all I'm saying is it's everything. Everything's a spiral. So I have played games with myself in particular around this. And at the
Mhm.
end of every week, and for a while, because it was COVID, I did it every day. But at the end of every week, because that was a lot and I was just feeling heavy at a certain point, I'd ask, where was I most embarrassed this week?
I
So
remember, I remember,
shame
I
was
remember.
removed of it. And it was more, what embarrassed me this week? And then that was something that could bridge out. Like if I couldn't find anything, I would go to like, where did I white lie? Or where did I want to white lie and edited myself out of it? And going back to your original point, it's like I want to sign my energy signature into this greater plasmic field with awareness. So I'm not going to send a white lie out. I'm not going to, because now I'm giving this message that you have to defend yourself because I have to defend myself. And now we're going to have to be ashamed of something. So, whatever that is, that was a little like embarrassed or like couldn't find it. I would go into something else of a layer of white lies or defensiveness. And then the
Hmm.
other one, if I can't find around that, is where am I judging someone right now?
Hmm.
Because that's the probably reflective layer of where I would be
Hmm.
judged by someone. And if I couldn't find where I was aware of myself, it's where am I being hyper aware of someone else? And that would help me find a chord to just sit with and then do some more things around after the sitting.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, because yeah, embarrassment, like the act of being embarrassed is the elicitation of shame, right? You want to
Mm-hmm.
hide, you get red, you feel like uh, like you're
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
something that you shouldn't be doing. Because that's what I mean, that's what it is, right? It's a reflection of being
And
in
then
like a
that's like that
wrong
hiding
place.
energy is what becomes addiction, right? It's like that's the little portal around it.
Say that again.
The hiding, the way shame and pleasure being part of it, but not exactly how I'm approaching the like line is like the shame is this compulsion towards the pleasure. Maybe that's where I would put that. But that's what leads into addiction is the hiding. And now you have to hide your pleasure. And now you're going to
Yes,
hyper
yes,
intensify
yes.
how you start hoarding that and the compulsive part around that because you have to hide. And it is around addictions, but I think it's also around the normalcy of ourselves that we feel like we have to hide because we've been catering to the rest of the world in weird, fucked up ways.
And that hiding creates uh, a dopamine response when you then engage in that behavior even more.
Oh, you're right. Right.
That's
The hiding is dopamine too.
the hide, right? So like you hide it, and therefore it heightens the experience now. And so even though you like that thing already, now you like it even more, and you like it even more because it's like now it's taboo. And it's
Yep.
taboo because you've hid it. And who are you hiding it from? Yourself.
Yeah. So the other thing is admitting that we like a thing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I like this thing and like, and really just like opening that up. I enjoy this. It could be like, every once in a while, not anymore. I think it's actually really gross, but like I had to go through and admitting like I enjoy a cigarette. And now I'm like, no, I don't. But I had to go through a lot of shame spiraling and releasing and that. And I think what moved the needle when nothing would move was that admission. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
okay.
yeah, I mean, and that's, so part of the reason why I wanted to do this is that like, we like to loop things back around a little bit to our kind of our core mission here, and like have conversations that are enlightening about enlightenment or whatever. And like the tantric path is one of joy. It's one of ecstasy. It's one of pleasure. It's one of bliss. And I love that you said that like the empowerment from this is the ability for us to admit that we enjoy things, that these things bring us pleasure, that these things bring us joy. And yes, some of it is an admission that, like, at least for myself, that there are things that we can enjoy. We don't have to be attached to them, but by labeling it, that by giving it a name, by giving it some power, that it loses its power over us. I am giving this thing power. It doesn't have power over me. I enjoy it. I can pick it up and use it, feel pleasure or whatever, put it back and not feel guilt about it because I'm not trying to hide it and not
That
in not hiding it.
it diminishes the taboo and it to your
Yes.
point, and I hadn't thought about that before, that is coupling with that dopamine response. That's
Yeah.
affairs that don't last once they're actually allowed in some ways,
Yeah,
but you're
totally.
right, I never thought about that exponentiating or potentiating. That's the word I want because I
Yes.
made up the other one.
Yeah,
But the
exponentiating is,
I liked it, I did.
it works.
But that is bigger. And so when that taboo goes away, it doesn't mean that the pleasurable thing isn't still going to trigger you a little bit, but you've at least shaved off some of that height.
Yes. Yeah. And they do this in there is many tantric practices that are not would not fit in this like as a Western view of spirituality, which we're working
Mm-hmm.
on making a new word, by the way. We'll make one at some point. or we'll find one. But some of which is to like when you achieve a certain level of meditative prowess, it's not about can you touch that level, it's can you maintain that level. And then
Hmm.
once you have maintained this level, can you take it out into the real world? Can you maintain that level then when, and this is real, when you're drunk, when you're high, when you're having sex, when you're enticed. So they'll say they'll literally go to a brothel, go to a strip club. Monks, regular clothes, will go and do these things. Why? They're doing this exact thing here. You are moving, attempting to be in the water without getting wet. We are wet and we're in the water. And I think the acknowledgement that these things are part of our existence takes away their hold on us, takes away their disempowerment of us as beings who are wanting to not just have pleasure and joy, but happiness, you know? And by removing the grips that things have on top of us, we are freed from their grasp.
Hmm.
And I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just, it's, I just thought of something I've never thought of. No, I mean, not in this way, not with this linkage. I had a vibrational experience of couple years ago of like, oh my God, my like anger is the same as my excitement. Like that
Mm.
vibration is like, it feels the same, but it's not, it's similar. And it is, it's because of that dopamine response and you're
Yeah.
getting this double down.
Yeah.
But I had a recent kind of thing at home that my body started vibrating and physically you could see it. And when I finally got outside and went for a run, I was like, oh, it's because the way that language came out, it was to induce shame. And part of it was the shame in me, and part of it was my fight against it, but it was
Mm.
so big. And that energy, that vibration, it just hurt because it's both. It's not just one frequency. It's probably 10 I can't even touch. But all that said, it's very similar to that feeling of like when you want more sugar and you've been eating sugar and now you can't stop eating sugar. And the vibration is so similar. There's texture and temperature differences,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like, oh my God, it's the shame pleasure response where it's
Yes.
like, I don't, I'm listening to you talk about the monks. And it's like they can then be in these situations because I'm like, oh, that'd be like terrible if it was just dead neutral, but it's not
No.
that. It's that they can and feel enjoyment without that really crazy compulsive high.
Hmm.
And that is our authentic nature.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. To not let it own you.
Own you. Hmm.
Yeah. To not let it own you. And I think that is a very good place to leave it. So Katie, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for
Audience,
having me.
of course, there will be more. And we'll do some more preparation for next time, whatever. We're just kind of
Yeah,
we're just
email me the
we're just
questions.
winging it today. You know what I mean? Like this is the
I
Daniel mode
love the
right
wing it
now.
on some things, but you see, when I like really have to come up with the answer, my brain goes out
Yeah,
too many places. It's
yeah.
hard to wheel it back in.
You'll learn. You'll learn. It's a skill that we have been cultivating for the last multiple
But
years.
those are really big questions. That's one of those things. You ask me a question like that and I have to write an essay, like I need 6 months for it.
Okay, well, you know,
If
it's
you gave me one of them, I could have worked with it.
yeah, well, we did
I'm just kidding.
multiple, but no, it was fine. It was totally good. Audience, thank you so much for listening. Definitely, I'm always interested in hearing what people think about things. What are your kind of New Year's plans for yourself, right? Because we like to people say New Year, new you, and I say New Year, same you, right?
Right.
Same shit,
Same
different day.
you.
Yeah, same you. So let's
Do one thing different.
yeah, so feel free, hit us up, ginandtantra@gmail.com. Get into our DMs on Instagram, the Gin and Tantra podcast. If you know any one of us, feel free to call us, text us, send us a messenger pigeon or a smoke signal if you want to have a conversation about this, because uh, this is just what we do. So thanks everybody for listening. Thank you for tuning into this year, and always for Katie and Eric, who isn't here, but I'm sure he is in spirit. This is Daniel. We'll catch you guys in the new year. Peace.